Today we are going to look at long division with one-digit divisors. That means we're going to be dividing a number by a single-digit number. So the steps of long division are divide, multiply, subtract, bring down, and some people remember that as does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers. Now there are three different ways you can write a division problem. You can write it as a fraction or a ratio. So this one, you would read the division problem from the top to the bottom. 325 divided by, that fraction bar means divided by, 5. You can write it this way, 325 divided by 5. And you can write it this way, the 325 divided by, and put the 5 on the outside. That's what I mean, a single digit or one-digit divisor. The 5 only has one digit. Now you may notice that I have put my paper, my notebook paper is sideways. That's because it helps me to line up the columns. If you have trouble lining up the columns, just turn your paper sideways and you'll keep everything straight. Now the first thing I'm going to do is divide. So I'm going to see, can I go in, does 5 go into 3? No, it doesn't go in there at all. So I'm going to put an X above this just to hold my place value, because if I put my first number over the 3, I'm going to mess up by the time I get to the end. Now I'm going to see, well, does 5 go into 32? It does. It goes in there 6 times. So I put my 6 up here. 6 times 5 is 30. So that's my multiplying. Then I subtract. I get 2. And I bring down. And I always draw an arrow. So that helps me keep it lined up too, because I maybe have writing a problem on something that doesn't have lines, like on a test paper, might not have lines at all. And so if you draw the arrows, it keeps them lined up. So I'm bringing down my 5. Now I'm going to go back and do this all over again. So I divide. 5 goes into 25 5 times. I multiply. 5 times 5. That's 25. I subtract, and I get 0. So I'm finished. My answer was 65. Let's try another one. What if we had 1,456 divided by 7? All right, 7 does not go into 1, but it goes into 14 twice. 2 times 7 is 14. Subtract. Bring down the 5. Now this is one of the biggest errors I see people make in division. You have to put a digit over every digit here. Now you don't with the first one. That's why I put an X to be a placeholder. Because the 0 in a whole number, you don't have to put a 0 at the beginning of it. So, but here, it goes into 5 0 times. Now, if I multiply, I get 0 and subtract, because 0 times 7 is 0. I subtract, get 5, and I can bring down my 6. Now, 7 goes into 56 8 times. And then I multiply. I get 56, and this is 0. Now, my answer is 208. Let's pretend this is money. If that were $208, if I had not put the 0 here and had just put an 8 here and had $28, would you be happy getting $28 when you were supposed to get $208? I don't think so. So don't forget that you have to put that 0 in there. Now, the other thing that may be a problem sometimes is if people are not good at their times tables yet, they need to practice them, because it's a whole lot easier to do math if you remember them. But if you don't, what you could have done to start with is you could have listed the multiples of 7. You could have counted by 7s or added 7 to each number. So you would get 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49, 56, 63, and 70. So this is 7 times 1, 7 times 2, 7 times 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You won't need the 10, but when you get to 7 times 10 and have a 0 at the end, you know you've written them all down. So if you didn't remember how many times 7 went into 56, you could go down here and you have it written down, and you would pick the biggest number that doesn't go over it. So it goes in exactly and makes 56. You don't want to get a number that's too big though, but you can look at your list if you're not good at the times tables. Now let's look at a couple of others. How about this one? 4 goes into 560. This time 4 goes into my first number. Divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. 4 goes into 16. I divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. Now we have the other biggest mistake I see people make in division. I'm not through. 4 goes into this 0 times. I have to put that 0 there because there's a big difference in $14 and $140. And if I told you that you could have one or the other, you'd certainly want that 140. You would not want just the 14. You have to put that 0 there. Now let's look at what we do when we have one that doesn't come out perfectly, doesn't come out evenly. All right, let's try this one. 3 goes into 16,216. Doesn't matter how many digits. We can keep divide, multiply, subtract, bring down until we get finished. 3 doesn't go into 1, goes into 16 5 times. Multiply, 15, subtract, bring down the 2. 3 goes into 12 4 times. Multiply, subtract. Now I bring down the 1. Again, it doesn't go into 1, so I have to put my 0 down. Now, I can either write this 0 and subtract it, or I could go ahead and bring down the 16 because I know I'm going to come up with 0. Come up with the same thing when I subtract my 0. But I'm going to multiply 3 times 0 is 0. I subtract. And see, the 1 comes down here. You could have just written that 1 and brought down the... You had the 1 already. You could have brought down the 6 to right here. But we're going to go ahead and show all these steps. 3 goes into 16 5 times. 15. Now I have a remainder of 1. A lot of people just learn to say R1, remainder 1. But we're dividing this into groups of 3. And I had 5,405 whole groups of 3. But what do I have left over? I have 1 left over. Now, with 1 left over, 1 of what? 1 of 3, 1 out of 3, because I was dividing it up into groups of 3, but my last group, instead of having 3, instead of being a group of 3, instead of having all 3 of these colored in, I only had 1 left, 1/3 left. I had 5,405 of these completely colored in, and then 1/3 left. So my answer will be 5,405 and 1/3. Now, the only other thing I think I need to tell you about this is sometimes you could come up with an answer where this fraction part could be simplified. Let's pretend we came up with the answer 245 and 2/10. Well, this 2/10 is not simplified. So you could simplify that number to be 1/5 because this is 2 times 5. This is 2 times 1. So I can cross out those 2's and I would have 1/5. And here's where I see people make mistakes here. They write it equals 1/5. No, it doesn't. It equals 245 and 1/5. So don't just do that. When you simplify, say that it equals 245 and 1/5. So that's how we are going to do this when you want to show your remainder as a fraction. When you want to show your remainder as a decimal, that's something we'll get into on another video.